the sand. If you go further up the beach, you have to dig further. So basically, the water is will rise to the elevation of wherever the ocean is. So it's the same kind of thing. When you have contamination, there's many types of contamination. So this picture is showing you, for instance, it goes through the overburden deposits and it hits the water table, and once it's flows from uphill to downhill. It flows very slowly because it's got to move through all those grains of sand, and it will move away from the source of contamination, creating a plume. The concentrations nearest the source will be the highest, and as you move further away from the source, the concentrations will decrease because it's mixing with clean water. Also, as it moves away, there's bacteria underground that can change the chemical composition of whatever was spilled. So with PFAS, for instance, there can be changes in the composition of the chemicals as they migrate away from the source. So what are PFAS? They're per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, which is a group of man-made compounds that are widely used in household and commercial products, and they've been used for decades. And it's a group of compounds. There's actually hundreds of them, and we're mainly looking at like 23 of them, but there are hundreds. They're used as processing in making non-stick cookware. They're in the stain protection and water resistant stuff that you put on carpets, clothing, furniture. Food wrappers, pizza boxes, they're used in industrial processes. And most important for Kingston is that they were used in firefighting foam. They can also be in septic systems because, as you can see, there's in a lot of household products. So if those household products get into your septic system, then they get into the groundwater through your septic system. So as I just explained, there's a lot of sources of PFAS, and each source is going to have a different combination of these PFAS compounds. So for instance, microwave popcorn bag may have different combination than firefighting foam. And even the same type of source, like firefighting foam, can change over time if the manufacturer changed what chemicals they were using, or if you bought it from a different vendor, then it might be different. So not only can, so there's a lot of possible changes that can happen just from where it came from. New Hampshire regulates 4 PFAS in drinking water. The drinking water standards in New Hampshire are referred to as Ambient Groundwater Quality Standards, or AGQS. And the 4 PFAS that are regulated in New Hampshire are PFOS, PFNA, and PFHXS. And the standards are between 11 and 18 nanograms per liter, which is equivalent to a part per trillion. So these are very low concentrations. EPA just recently proposed a standard of 4 parts per trillion for PFOA and PFOS. So that's quite a bit lower than what we're looking at in New Hampshire right now. So for the wells that we've sampled in Kingston, we've analyzed for 23 PFAS. So the 4 that are regulated plus 19 others. So we have sampled 92 private wells since 2016. Of those, 27 either have or have had concentrations exceeding the drinking water standards. 6 of those homes have point of entry treatment systems. 20 of them are being provided bottled water by the town, and one of the locations doesn't use the water for drinking, so we're not providing them water at all. We've also evaluated sort of the concentration trends that we've seen in the PFAS in the wells, and this was a statistical evaluation, and for the statistics to be meaningful, we needed samples that were collected. We need at least 4 samples, and we wanted them spaced at least a year apart. So there were 7 locations where we had at least 4 calendar years worth of samples, and the results of that statistical evaluation showed that the concentrations were either stable or decreasing, and that's at a 95% confidence interval. So that's good news, that concentrations weren't increasing anywhere. So this figure shows the results of the PFAS sampling. Basically, it shows where the concentrations exceed drinking water standards. There's a lot of information on this figure, but I'm going to focus on the color of the symbols. So where the symbol is red, that is where one of the 4 regulated compounds exceeded the drinking water standard. So to orient you, the fire station is located here. We are up here, I think, right now in Town Hall. So you can see that most of the exceedances of drinking water standards are along Rock Rimmon Road. There's one down here just north of Great Pond, and then there's a handful of them along Main Street on the east side, mostly the east side of Main Street. The purple concentrations, or the purple symbols, mean that at least one of the detected PFAS was half of the drinking water standard, but none of them exceeded drinking water standard. And then the blue PFAS were detected, but they were all below at least half of the drinking water standard. And the green ones there was no PFAS were detected. The other thing important on this map is the parcels that are outlined with blue lines are being provided bottled water, and the ones with the green outline have point of entry treatment systems. And you can see, anywhere there's a red symbol, those locations are being provided clean water. Now I want to just take a minute to talk about which way groundwater flows. So Green Pond, according to the USGS map, is at an elevation of about 124 feet. And Great Pond is at an elevation of about 119 feet. So water is flowing from the area of Greenwood Pond towards the area of Great Pond. And then Powwow Pond is at an elevation of 116 feet, so it's lower than Great Pond. So in the sort of big picture sense, groundwater is going to be flowing generally from Greenwood Pond towards Great Pond towards Powwow Pond. The fire station is up here, and there were monitoring wells at the fire station before they rebuilt the fire station, and they showed groundwater flow at the fire station to the west along Rock Rimmon Road. And based on the data that I'm going to be showing you, it looks like it then flows towards the southwest, towards Great Pond, which makes sense. What we don't really know is which way groundwater is flowing up in this area, where we're also seeing exceedances of drinking water standards. It seems like this area is likely up gradient of the fire station, basically uphill, but we don't have any wells to support that at this point, so we don't know for sure. So this is a figure of one of the PFAS compounds. It's called PFOA. It's the most commonly detected in the groundwater in the wells in Kingston. The drinking water standard for this is 12 parts per trillion. Anywhere there's a purple or a blue symbol, those are locations that exceed the drinking water standard for PFOA. So you can see there's a high concentration of them right along Rockrimmon Road. The concentration, so this up here is a blow up of the fire station property, because there were 6 monitoring wells here, so just to make it easier to see. The concentrations in the wells on the fire station were like 200 parts per trillion. As you move down Rockrimmon Road, the concentrations decrease, and then it looks, then these concentrations down here are all below drinking water standards, except for this location just north of Great Pond, where it also exceeds drinking water standards. And then along Main Street, there's a sort of a higher concentration up here, and then some other exceedances of drinking water standards along Main Street. The other thing to notice on this figure, the circle symbols mean that the wells are completed in the overburden deposits, and the squares mean the well is completed in bedrock. And the diamonds mean we aren't sure where the well is completed. But you can see from this that there are bedrock wells, squares, and circles, overburden wells, that exceed drinking water standards. In Kingston, the overburden wells tend to be up to about 50 feet deep, and the bedrock wells are generally 100 or more feet deep. This is the PFOS results. Again, the purple and the blue symbols exceed drinking water standards, and you can see there were a few monitoring wells on the fire station property that exceeded drinking water standards, which for PFOS is 15 parts per trillion. But the concentrations in these monitoring wells, the highest was like 25 parts per trillion. Up here at this property, PFOS was detected at, I can't even read it, 350 parts per trillion, so much higher than at the fire station, which suggests that there's another source of PFAS up here. Again, the circles are overburden wells, and the squares are bedrock wells. This figure is helping us evaluate sort of the composition of the PFAS that we see in the groundwater. So we took the 10 most commonly detected PFAS in the water, in the wells, and we gave them each a color. So for instance, the PFOS here is this reddish color. The PFOA is the dark green. Something called 6,2-FTS is yellow. Then we made a pie, and the size of the slice of pie is proportional to the concentration of that PFAS that was detected in that sample. So if the colors and the size of the colors look similar, then that sort of indicates it's coming from the same source. And if they look totally different, perhaps there's a different source. And if you look at the fire station, again, these are the fire station wells, there's a lot of the lime green, there's some pink and yellow, and there's a pretty good amount of blue. And if you look, it kind of looks like that same pattern flows down to the wells in this direction, which makes sense. We know the groundwater at the fire station flowed to the west, and it makes sense that it would be heading towards Great Pond. There's 2 wells down here just north of Great Pond. The sort of colors in the pie look a little bit different, and the concentrations are higher here than they are in the wells, just what we assume is up gradient. Whether that's because the PFAS have sort of changed as they've migrated this way, or maybe there's some contribution from septic systems or something down here, it's hard to tell. If you notice the well where we saw on the previous slide that had the high PFOS concentrations, that dark red that's more than half of the circle is the PFOS, and you don't see that same, so that looks very different than what you're seeing down here at the fire station. And then if you look, you know, we don't know which way groundwater's flowing. It's possible groundwater's flowing in this direction, or it could be flowing in this direction. We don't have any monitoring wells to determine that at this point. But it does look like there's another source, again, at this location, which is right next to where we're sitting. So we take all the information that's been collected over the years, and we sort of develop a conceptual site model. So the sources, it looks like, you know, the fire station is a source of PFAS to groundwater. There's also information that indicates that there were bonfires at a festival on the Kingston Plains right across the street from the fire station for a number of years, and that those fires were put out with firefighting foam. So that's another potential source. As I've shown before, north of the fire station on the east side of Main Street, it looks like there's another source, but we don't know what the source is. And just north of Great Pond, there's an indication there might be another source, possibly septic. Contamination is present in both the overburden and the bedrock groundwater. As we discussed, groundwater flow from the fire stations to the west and then likely to the southwest toward Great Pond. And the flow along Main Street is not well understood. PFAS concentrations appear to be stable to decreasing. The extent of PFAS in groundwater is pretty well defined. There's one area where we're recommending a couple of other wells be sampled. And then the public is protected by the town providing drinking water at locations where concentrations exceed the drinking water standard, and also with continued monitoring to make sure that residents that aren't being provided clean water, that their concentrations remain below drinking water standards. So the town is going to have a permanent solution for this. Bottled water is not considered a permanent solution. So we looked at some of the options and pulled together some very rough costs. So the first option would be to put point of entry treatment systems on all the homes that exceed drinking water standards. So right now that's 26. And we assume that they, that they would have to operate for 20 years. If you install and operate 26 systems for 20 years, that comes out to $1.5 million. That does not account for inflation. If the drinking water standard were to be lowered to something like 4, you may have to treat as many as 48 homes, which would be more like $2.8 million. Another option would be to extend a water line from a nearby town, and we looked at Exeter and Plastow, and we just looked at what the cost per mile to install the water line would be, and that's between $6.8 and $9.1 million. We don't know if Exeter or Plastow have water they could provide. You'd have to contact them, work something out. You'd have to do, obviously, engineering studies. I don't know if you'd need infrastructure like pumping stations or storage tanks. That's on top of the estimated $6.8 to $9.1 million. And the final option is to develop your own water supply. You would have to do investigations to figure out where you could get water. You'd have to install test wells and run tests, to see how much water you could get. You'd have to design your infrastructure. You'd have to get permits. You'd probably have to build a treatment system of some kind. The town of Stratham is in the process of doing this, and their estimate is $14.6 million. So we just gave you that as a sort of ballpark number. The state does have grants and loans that can be applied to, depending on what you decide to do. And, we'd have to talk to the state more about what the options are. Next steps. The town is going to be required to continue to monitor the wells. What we're recommending in this report, and just because we recommend it doesn't mean the state isn't going to ask for more. We're recommending annual sampling at the 27 locations with AGQS exceedances, because those homes are being provided with clean water to drink. We're recommending twice per year sampling at 7 locations where the concentrations are greater than half the AGQS but below the AGQS, because we want to make sure that they stay below the AGQS. And then we're recommending at 9 locations that they be sampled one more time. These are locations that are near wells that have AGQS exceedances, and they've either only been sampled once or they haven't been sampled at all. And then depending on the results, we may have to continue to sample them, or maybe we don't have to sample those. We're recommending that you prepare a report once a year to supply this information to the state. You're required to turn in the results within 45 days to the state, but once a year you would want to write a report basically summarizing what you found. What do the concentration trends look like? Do you need to make any modifications to the sampling based on what you found? We're recommending additional investigations. We're recommending collecting 8 soil samples in the Kingston Plains in the area where these bonfires were put out with firefighting foam, to find out if there's PFAS remaining in the soil that is a continuing source of contamination to groundwater. We're recommending 2 to 3 monitoring wells, well, two monitoring wells at the fire station, because the 6 that were there were removed when they rebuilt the fire station, so there's no monitoring wells at the fire station. And then possibly installing one at Kingston Plains, unless we can use one of the irrigation wells that's there. We have to find that out. As an option, we're recommending 5 monitoring wells sort of along Main Street to help us understand which way groundwater is flowing, and maybe understand that additional source that we seem to be finding, to figure out which way groundwater is flowing from there. We're recommending sampling the 3 monitoring wells on the fire station in Kingston Plains, measuring water levels at all the wells so we can figure out which way groundwater is flowing, and we'll have to prepare a report to submit to the state. And a rough cost for that is between $24,000 and $38,000, depending if you install those extra 5 monitoring wells.
Is that an annual cost, or is that for the initial installation and then there's a different annual cost for that?
That's just for that investigation, that everything that's on that slide. And that's a rough, we didn't get quotes or anything, that's just kind of ballpark. So this slide shows sort of where we're thinking of installing monitoring wells at the pink locations. It's a little hard to see, but there's one there, one here, one here, one here, one here. These are sort of the optional ones, if you decide you don't want to. And again, the state may tell you you have to, but we can leave these out of the report for now, and we're going to have to put at least 2 monitoring wells in at the fire station where the source is, and then another one maybe on the Kingston Plains. There is an irrigation well here, but I don't know if it's something that we could use as a monitoring well. And then collect the soil samples in this area near the fire station. The other thing the state is going to require is that town create a groundwater management zone. And this is done by applying for a groundwater management permit, because you have to control the use of groundwater where the groundwater is contaminated. And this will require putting a deed restriction on all the affected properties. Basically, you know, it would say something like, you know, you can't put a well in without letting us know or talking to the state, because you don't want people putting in wells not knowing that the water is contaminated. You have to implement measures to restore groundwater quality. You have to monitor and report, which is what I had on the previous slide, is sort of what we're recommending right now for monitoring and reporting. You have to evaluate the effectiveness of what you're doing, and the permit has to be renewed every 5 years. If we were to draw a groundwater management zone right now, this pink outline is basically encompassing the properties that have groundwater, drinking water standard exceedances. So usually you just follow the property lines, but you know, this is the area that we're talking about. So you would have to put deed restrictions on all the properties within that area. That's all we have. I imagine you have questions.
Can you go back to slide 17?
Yes.
So if I'm just looking at that, that's north, south, east, and west. Where we're seeing the different markups for PFAS across the street and up north. Do you know if the flow is heading that direction? Kind of going from north to east and then downward? Because all of the rest from the fire station kind of looks at all those going down. But those, could that, because there was another site, there was an old, I was told, an upper property had a boat, some sort of boat maintenance shop.
Oh, the plaza across the street.
Yes. So could that be like flowing down a different source that way?
So the location over here with the highest concentrations is this property here.
Yep.
Which is
Is that one
right next door.
Yep.
But it's a house, so I don't.
Which would indicate that the source is probably there.
Yes.
But
I don't know.
But what's causing it?
Right.
Right.
We don't know. Now, you can, because we don't know which way groundwater is flowing in that area, it's hard to say, well, it's unlikely it's coming from the fire station, because that's, we would guess, is uphill.
Right.
But we don't have any wells. You could tell the state, well, it's not our source, so you figure it out. But I don't know where to draw the line between what's from the fire station and what's not, because we don't understand groundwater flow in this area.
Is there any characteristics of the sampling that you've done that could attribute it or not attribute a particular well contamination to the fire station source? Or is it generic enough that all you know is the values?
Well, this one looks different. It's got much more PFOS in it than anywhere else. Yeah. But, you know, down here, could this be coming from this source, or could groundwater from here be also flowing in this direction? We don't know. So it would be hard to say, well, everything over here can't be from the fire station without putting some wells in.
The second one from the top, Looks like it has the same makeup. No, further up.
Right
Yeah,
there.
that one right there has the same makeup, doesn't it?
It's similar, but it's lower concentrations. So
The size of the circle indicating
Right,
the concentration.
So the concentrations here are like 500, and the concentrations up here are like 40.
But the concentration might be different, but it's the same genetic markup though, right?
Right, but that would indicate that water is flowing from here to here. Because concentrations decrease the further you get from the source.
And the area that you were talking about, Kevin, the plaza across the street and the former boat activity, it's the circle below the one you were talking about.
This here.
That one there.
Okay.
So that's why we put these circles together, but it's not an exact science. They change if the source, if the PFAS or the firefighting foam you were using over time changed, but I don't know how. This looks very different, and it looks like it's uphill.
Yeah, if you look to the west of the fire station, kind of one of the telltale signs that you see are the yellow and the green. And the yellow and the green are important because the yellow one turns into the green. And so if you add those two together, that is, I think, our best qualitative guess as to what's coming from the fire station. And that's pretty consistent as you go towards the west. But yeah, as you guys have been noting, the stuff up to the north, and the very high concentration next to us, is quite different, pattern-wise.
I think you answered it with the first slide, but my question was, if someone had a dug well that was contaminated, drilling a point well isn't going to help it?
We're seeing contamination in the bedrock also. So it's in the overburden and the bedrock wells.
I don't want to get off the topic of the study, but just a generic question. The nature of these forever chemicals, they're pretty much everywhere.
Right.
What are the chances that if we sampled wells anywhere in town, that we're going to get some that are exceeding the limits?
So, I'd say pretty good, because...
Could you use the mic, please?
I would say the sources are pretty good that you'll find PFAS randomly in places, mostly because, as Dan had pointed out, septic systems are a known source. And they're a known source because you got stuff on the carpeting, you sweep it, it gets into the drain. But we also have it in our bodies, right? From years of body burden. Every time we go to the bathroom, we contribute a little bit of PFAS. So it's a question of where your septic is relative to your neighbors and your wells and things of that sort. But you would tend to find lower concentrations, not the really high ones you're finding in these places. But maybe 10 parts per trillion would not be unusual.
And this round of sampling versus the last round 2 years ago, how much of a difference? You said it's a slight decrease, but is it trending downward, or we can't tell yet?
So based on the locations where we had enough data, it's either stable, meaning the concentrations are about the same, or they've decreased a little bit. Things move very slowly in groundwater, and they take a long time to go away.
So naturally just filter itself out, not at any record pace that it's going to help any of our residents or town, but you were saying over the course of 20, 50 years it'll filter itself out from this chemical makeup?
Yes, that's our belief.
Another question? I read through most of your summary, the 20 or so page one, and where you talk about some of the funding that's there for offsetting some of the costs. Maybe it's there, but I didn't see it, and that is the money from DES to cover either installation of an on-site treatment system or a connection to a municipal water system. Was it in there? Because I didn't see it.
I thought it was in an attachment,
Was it?
but I can check.
Because I believe it's,
I did find it on the
You did?
DES's website.
no, but I mean in the report.
No, I didn't see it in the report. I went kind of trying to dig it for myself.
Right, because it's 5,000 for,
So it says that New Hampshire DES will provide a one-time rebate to private well users up to $5,000 for the installation of a point of entry, or up to $10,000 for a service connection to a public water system. And one of the caveats in here that if the town is providing you bottled water, you're not eligible.
They won't do that if there's a known source.
Okay.
Like the fact that the town is responsible, the state will not do that.
okay.
The town is gonna have to apply as an entity to get money.
To get those rebates for those individual systems.
So that option is open to us.
It depends if they have money left.
Well, of course, yes.
Well, how did the first 5 go in? The first 5 went in without the town, the state put them in.
The state put them in because they didn't know where the source was. But
So
then,
they won't do it now, so even if the homeowner calls, the
Correct.
state won't do it.
Correct. Because they're attributing the town as the source, so the town is responsible.
And we have 6 currently in, and we, at the very least, need 22 more point of entry?
20 more.
20 more,
20 more, 21.
At least, yeah.
26 total, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And when I talked to the state in December, they had money they would pay for the installation and 1 year of maintenance, but then the town would be responsible for the maintenance after that. And I don't know if they have any of those funds left.
Oh, I mean, at the very least, I think we need to do some homework and figure that out. And, you know, if the board decides that we want to start pursuing that, I'm happy to be a contact point and reach out to them if Susan would want some help on that, or.
I would think the bottled water was a temporary solution.
Yeah, it's a horrible solution.
Exactly. It wasn't a solution, it was a temporary solution.
Well, yes, of course.
So I think we have to do something.
I think we at least need to decide which route we're going to take and work towards that. I mean, I can say from knowledge that I've had and watching other municipal water treatment systems, I don't think I'm in the camp of wanting to connect to another community or develop our own water system, because any community where I've seen them develop that, it has gone over by tens of millions of dollars and perpetual increasing costs. And it seems like some of these figures are just for the initial installation, and that doesn't, include like all the additional equipment that's required, staffing, infrastructure to accommodate that. So, I think us looking at the point of entry system seems like the most feasible going forward, but I still think we need to figure out a way to craft it.
I think even if we wanted to get another town to give us water, that's not gonna happen for
A long time.
A long
5
time.
to 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's a good estimate. That's being generous. But yes, I think we're at a point where we have to at the very least get the point of entry systems in for the affected ones. And then from there, we do gotta come up with, I would still say that's almost a temporary solution, buy us 5, 10 years,
Well,
15
and it's
years.
financially, it's a temporary solution because we have to figure out how to fund the installation of those systems and whether or not we're going to qualify or get any rebates from the state. I know we have some options of money that we could probably tap into if we had to, but I think getting those systems installed as soon as possible for the eligible homes is the most important thing. Because they're all, and I don't know if it's come up in other reports, there are a lot of people that have had questions about, is there any possible contamination to them from bathing in this, in the meantime, they're drinking bottled water, but is there any type of negative effects from bathing or animals drinking and consuming this type of chemicals?
Well, the bathing is probably fine, because it really doesn't get into your skin much unless you swallow a lot of water in the shower, which hopefully you don't do. But the animals getting water, that is a research question still. There's certainly some farms that have had trouble with PFAS. Usually comes from the feed, but it's going to depend on the animal, and I would think large mammals would pick the stuff up, but it's another good reason to put in a poet. Just
Now, if this is the option the board decided to pursue, that you would help us with, like, that is it your company that would help us with that proposal, how we maintain it? If we installed ground wells and these monitoring systems, is there a possibility we may discover that, hey, some of these homes we've been providing the annual servicing for, there's absolutely no way it came from a town property in the future, and then the town, I don't think at that point the town should be responsible for those individual ones.
Yeah, I mean, you can speak to this better, but we do have some choices. And when we talk about that area to the north, that's kind of why Ann put all those new monitoring wells out there. When the monitoring wells were originally put in by Stantec years ago, they are all on the fire station property. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, so we don't even have a sense as to going across Main Street, which is one of the reasons we want to put at least a well there to see if the stuff on the east side of Main Street could possibly be flowing in that direction. But going to the north, I think, is probably the bigger place of concern if you wanted to limit, you know, your responsibility and town's responsibility. That's where you, I think, should look because of this other source.
And it would probably be a couple of years before that, at least before that data would be available, but I think we should err on the side of caution, of, you know, because some of these homes have already been affected for a long period of time, receiving bottled water, and they're understandably upset that we haven't done something sooner. So I would almost, if we're gonna look towards doing installation, I would say all the ones that qualify it based on the report that we move forward with that.
Can I ask, on a point of entry system as well, it's custom to that residence's water makeup, correct? It's not just a one cookie cutter system fits all and you change it 4 times a year, the filter. It depends on how high the iron is or whatever else the makeup is, or?
So the systems, they are pretty cookie cutter. They're 2 canisters of carbon. Usually the homeowners already have metals treatment if that's a problem, so it would just be added on to whatever they already have. And the carbon removes the PFAS from the water. And the town has hired another firm that installs these systems and maintains them. They usually go out twice a year and check them and change the carbon once a year.
Yes, more frequently, you know, the higher the concentration, the faster the carbon fills up, the more you're going to be replacing the carbon, essentially. But they check them twice a year?
Yeah.
Okay, well, it was my understanding in the past, if his water's high in iron and mine isn't, you know, and we both have a point of entry system, his would need to be changed more or something because of the iron in the water or the makeup in the water, or is that not accurate?
It's possible that the iron could clog up the carbon, but that's something that the company that you hire to install these systems would keep track of.
So it does have to be kept track of.
Yeah, what they've been doing is sampling the systems once a year. So basically you have the water goes in the first carbon tank, which takes most of the contamination, and then the second carbon tank is just sort of like extra protection. So they go once a year and they collect water before the first carbon tank, between the carbon tanks, and after the second carbon tank. And usually the sample between the 2 carbon tanks is fine, which means, you know, the second carbon tank is probably still clean.
Okay.
So they just replace the dirty carbon tank, then they switch the order of the tanks and let it go for another year.
Okay.
If they see breakthrough after the first tank, then they're gonna start checking it more frequently.
Okay.
So at this point, I would say the board has kind of 2 decisions to make. I would say, one, we would probably have to make a vote on that we want to direct Sanborn Head to move through the process if we were all comfortable using the point of entry systems. And then I think before we decide on, you know, while they craft up that plan, I think we have to go and take a look at our funding options. I think realistically our most, for the installation, is probably going to be ARPA funding. I mean, that's the only place where we're going to have that kind of money. But I think we need to look at some different options.
I think so, but I think Sanborn Head, their focus should be on what their proposal is. That the point of entry we could do on our own without them involved in it. I don't think we need them for that.
Okay.
We can do that on our own. With the company we've been using, we could go back out to bid and see, you know, maybe see what the price of it. Call DES would be the first thing, and see if money's available.
Okay, yeah, and I brought that up just because in their report, in their draft report, it talked about mapping out what the option is. So I guess maybe you would just document the option that the town's going forward with for your final report.
Yeah, we would just have a sentence that says the town plans to pursue
Okay.
Poet Systems.
Yeah, so they would,
That's it.
they're keeping that part of their contract.
Okay.
I think the point of entry would be on us. And I think,
And the cost to install a system is about $4,500 per system.
Yeah, and in addition to finding out, you know, if money is still available or not, given the fact that this is it's a municipal issue, they might have a different arrangement for us if we were an intermediary for the homeowners as opposed to the homeowners going directly to them. I don't know. You know, would it still be a rebate? Would we have to front the money? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I think if we're gonna be responsible for the system, we should have some type of say in it, because part of however that contract is done up, we're gonna have to be involved. And I don't know, how does the previous contract go with the current company that, is this, because this is gonna be a much larger project, should we be considering going up to bid?
well, that's what I'm saying, we should be looking at it and seeing, but at the time, they were the best, and I think, but we should probably relook at it. I think the first step would be contact DES and
Yeah.
find out if money's available.
Yeah,
Then from there, we're gonna, if it is, great, we can move at, you know, pretty quick, get an RFP out and start installing these. If not, we're gonna have to look at our funding, but I still think we have to move forward and we have to do it.
yeah, so I think, so if that's consensus to the board, we'll move forward exploring the point of entry system. If, Glenn, if you don't mind being that point of contact, the board's good with that, to reach out to DES.
Yeah.
But I'd like us to start getting information as soon as possible, because I think we need to be making decisions every week until we have something set up on this.
Is the rest of the board comfortable with me doing some initial contact work with DES?
Yep.
And then, so the next question is, I think we'll have to get back to Sanborn Head on that 28 to 48,000, was it 24 to 48,000? I can't remember what that last slide was.
So the state is expecting you to at least put some wells in at the fire station and investigate the source on the Kingston Plains. So that's kind of the 24,000. Then the monitoring well, those additional 5 monitoring wells is what you need to decide is, do you want us to propose to put them in or not? So just sort of how we tell the state about this additional source and what the town wants to, like, do you say, hey, state, there's another source, you figure out what it is? I don't know how that would go over. Or, you know, do you put in some wells so you understand which way groundwater is flowing and have a better case for figuring out, particularly in sort of this area, is it coming from the fire station or something else?
That's been a big question all along, is, you know, where is it coming, not just the fire station, but is it coming from other places, whether it be, you know, private property or wherever it might be. And I think probably at the end, we've talked about doing the wells that show the flow, and we just haven't got to it. I just think that we need to do that, because everybody keeps asking the question.
Yeah, if we can find the way to fund it properly, I think it's important, because this is a 20 to 50 year problem, not a
This is
not
not
a one-time shot.
So I think it'd be more prudent to get the soil samples and the monitoring wells in place so they can do their homework.
Yeah, so my recommendation, and if the board feels that, I think we need to go with those items that would.
Yeah, we just gotta find where we're gonna get the money
We're just
from.
gonna figure out the funding for it, so I think we kinda all have a lot of work to do on this, to find some ideas over the next week.
I think we should take a look and have the finance director take a look at that,
Yeah,
to see what we have in trust funds and, you know, that could be used, and, you know, what the budget looks like.
okay. So Susan, can you let Paula know that we need to look at any available funding that we have?
So we'll include those 5 additional monitoring wells, and then as far as the groundwater management zone, our recommendation would be not to propose one at this time, to tell the state that we want to wait until we get the data from these additional wells before we
I'm sorry, say that again, your proposal is not to what?
don't include a proposed groundwater management zone at this point.
Okay.
So I showed you that map with the big
Yeah,
area.
yeah.
But I think it makes sense to just tell them we don't have enough information to
Okay.
define that yet.
Okay.
And that we'll have to wait until after this investigation.
Okay.
And who would make contact with, should we be telling the state that?
Well, we'll put it in the report.
Okay.
You wanna open up to anyone?
I think, I mean, this is an important enough topic. I know we're kind of going out of context here, but I would like it to open it up to public comment on this. I would just ask that any members of the public kind of direct your questions to the board. Don't interrogate Sanborn Head, and if we can relay those questions through or think it's appropriate to demand an answer.
I'm gonna get the stand mic set up and ask people to use that.
I don't know if anyone's gonna, I just don't know.
What's that?
I don't know if anyone's going to, but.
Is there anyone that would like to come and comment on this topic? We'll have to have you gotta come forward, you're gonna have to state your name. Glenn's getting a microphone for you, so everyone at home will be able to hear you as well.
Yeah, Tom Mullica from 12 Rock Women. And I would just like to know, Ann, if these slides are going to be available in the future or publicly?
So this, I mean, because this was an initial, well, I think, I don't see any issues with these slides being made available immediately as long as they're nothing
I
proprietary.
would ask administrator could get you whatever slide you're looking for.
So if we can just post those on the website. I know the draft report is still a draft until it's finalized, so I know there may have been some issues with releasing that. I kind of sent out a question about that earlier in the week, early last week.
One more question is, there's only four there's only four subcategories of the PFAS that we're looking at. Is there any movement elsewhere to start looking at other subcategories of PFAS that we need to be concerned about?
You can answer it if you'd like, if you have.
Yeah, the state right now regulates 4 compounds. EPA has proposed some new standards, so maximum contaminant levels would apply to drinking water. They chose 2 of those 2 compounds, but they also have another 2 the state doesn't regulate at this point. So there are a couple more that are proposed by EPA. That's going to go through rulemaking, public comment. That's out for public comment right now. It could be that if those become law, that New Hampshire has to adopt it. So there would be a couple more compounds that are looked at.
Are those compounds currently being measured in the tests that you are doing?
I know at least one of them is. Do you know if Gen X is on the list? That's one of the ones that.
I think that,
Yeah.
I think the other one wasn't detected in any of the wells in Kingston, so I don't think we're sampled for it anymore.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to comment on this topic while we have these folks here still? Do you have any more questions for us as the board?
Do we need are you holding off on any motions at this point?
I would, because I think we're gonna explore the options before we commit to anything. I think if we come up with some data next week on funding mechanisms and the information that we got from the state, I'd then be looking to maybe entertain a formal motion next week if we're gonna look to go out to RFP, but I wanna act quickly. Yes, sir.
Rick Russman, 18 Beach Drive. And ultimately, and I say this, I serve on the Drinking Water and Groundwater Trust Fund Commission in terms of giving out money and that kind of stuff, and so does Andrea Cantor, who's also a soil scientist here in town. And ultimately, would it be your recommendation at Kingston we do find a water source that, I mean, just seems like we are putting a Band-Aid on here for now and kicking it down the road a little bit, but are you saying that we can just kind of go on for who knows how long, just the way we are, without some kind trying to identify a water source and then test it, and then start thinking about the infrastructure as far as getting pipes in the ground and that kind of thing. I mean, I don't know if they have a recommendation, like if you were living in Kingston, what would you want Kingston to do? If it was your town, you know, like that type of thing, what would you recommend to the board that they do kind of long range here as far as a remedy for our town?
Well, obviously, I mean, the point of entry systems are much cheaper for the town at this point than the other options. And, you know, I don't know if there's other reasons that you would want to develop your own water supply.
Well, we have larger issues than this, which are eventually gonna necessitate water for at least some parts of town, particularly the areas around the lakes and ponds. You know, what used to be summer camps are now year-round homes. They're all on septic systems, and even though the technology is better, you know, stuff still gets into the lakes. So, I mean, there are a lot of reasons for looking at putting infrastructure in, at least for some parts of town. And you know, it could be coupled with trying to find a response to this problem as well. But I think it's a bigger issue than just infrastructure for a handful of homes that are affected by this issue.
All right, so if there's no more questions or comments on that, I'm gonna close out this appointment. Thank you very much. We appreciate the information.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we are going to open it up for our normal public comment, first public comment section. Fire chief. Oh, wait till they clear out. Fire chief's just waiting for that to clear the table, and he's gonna come right up. It's not like it's getting out of public comment.
When I get information from DES, I'll feed it to Susan, and she can distribute it out to parks, just so that they're not getting into third hand. Well, discussion.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
And it's okay to put this on the website now?
Yes. Yeah, those slides we should put right up.
presentation. So Susan, once I get some information from DES, I'll provide it to you and you.
Chief, come on up.
To all of us, yeah.
Good evening. So I have actually some good news in the wake of that invitation that's going to cost the town some money. So last week we received a check for the reimbursement grant from the state, totaling $64,000 from, again, the state for the generator installation at the Kingston Fire Station. I would like to first publicly thank Janet Stevens of the Governor's Council for all of her due diligence and help with obtaining that grant. But I spoke with some members of the building committee, and it is our recommendation that the selectmen just put that into the general fund. So we have remaining money left on the building committee, remaining at the fire station to finish up any projects that we have currently.
Is there anything that prohibits us from doing that?
Well, so the 64,000 grand is for the generator?
Yes.
And is
It's
that?
a reimbursement grant, meaning we've already paid for the generator. The state is reimbursing us because it's emergency operations center.
And we paid for it out of the?
We paid for it out of the building fund.
Building fund. Okay. Is the 64,000 more than it costs to do the generator?
Yeah, it was almost double that, but they will only cover 50%.
Oh, okay.
I think we need to take a motion to accept the unanticipated
Correct.
revenue. And then if that's your recommendation, sure.
Okay. So I would take a motion to accept the $64,000, is it 64 exactly?
Yes.
$64,000 from the grant reimbursement from the generator project.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
And apply the money to the general fund.
Yes. You good with that, Chuck?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. As long as that's legit for us to do.
Yeah.
Now with some bad news. So over the weekend, one of my full-timers noticed some issues with our primary ambulance, Ambulance 1. I put it into the shop today with Durham Bus, and what my employee thought was a front-end problem is actually a rear-end problem. So they're not sure how bad the rear-end problem is. Durham Bus is not comfortable rebuilding the rear-end. He said we can shop around and try to get it rebuilt, but where it's an ambulance and there aren't many shops around. So he got me a price to replace the rear end at $7,312. So I don't, again, with the enormous amount of repairs that I have requested for my vehicles, I'm not sure where that money should come from. Maybe from the $64,000.
Good try.
I will note as I'm looking through the POs, the Donovan Springs came in at 1,700 versus the original was like 4,500.
Yeah, it was a lot of money, so.
I try to save money where I can. So again, the ambulance is still at Durham. He recommends not driving it at all because if you blow over the drive shaft, it could do a lot more damage. I don't have that in any of my budgeted items for rolling stock because we don't usually.
Is the ambulance fund only for purchase of new vehicle?
No, I'd have to see if it covers repairs. It does cover like education and training and supplies, but I'm not sure if it covers repairs as well.
If it could cover repair, I would consider that a possible option. Yeah.
And some of these repairs are for something that's not relevant to the rear end. You've got 4 new tires coming, which you would have normally
Yes.
in your other budget for that.
So when we had it put in, when we put it in March for its annual inspection, it needed front rotors, front pads, and then 4 rear wheels. So that was also included in this price. So you're getting more than just the rear end.
Okay, so yeah, can we find out if this is something that can be covered from the ambulance fund?
I can do that research and get you an answer for you.
Yeah, how are we in the meantime though?
Right, can we look at, because it's down to 1 ambulance, which is kind of detrimental at times, can we say if the ambulance fund does cover it, and I will find that answer out tomorrow, then I will pull it out of there. If not, can we?
Well, you gotta get it
I think it's gonna be fixed.
We gotta fix it no matter what.
It's a question where it's coming from. I don't think we should delay the repairs.
So I would entertain a motion that we proceed with getting the ambulance repairs done as recommended by the fire chief, with the determination of the funding source to be decided at the next meeting.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Still in public comment, if anyone would like to come forward. Seeing none, I will close first public comment. Committee liaison reports. I'll start with you, Glenn.
I don't have much to report. Historic District meets tomorrow. I'm still talking with Recreation regarding the code of conduct and some of the issues they have with pickleball, but that's on the back burner at the moment because of some other things that the Recreation Director has going on. I also still been working with Paula and also Director of Public Works to figure out the telephone line issue at the museum. It was Phil's recommendation, because they're not currently part of the Block 5 system, to add them to it, and that would give them phone service, and then the other line can be used for the alarm, and that way the two won't cross. And so the next step was that Paula is going to be contacting Block 5.
Okay.
And starting that process.
Okay.
That's it.
Kevin?
We've got trash meeting tomorrow for the solid waste task force. Other than that, that's, King's Day is coming up too.
Okay. Sure.
Budget Committee. I did not make the last meeting, but I did have a meeting in coming up with some ideas, which I will run by as to what they anticipate doing this year to hopefully not make it as long and or as arduous as it was last year. They do have 9 members. We can have up to 12, but they do have 9 experienced members who have been on for a couple of years, so I think that knowing what we met with the selectmen and all that last year, that they have a good idea of handling what we may be looking for and what they're looking for. They're going to be meeting twice before the actual budget committee meetings, and to go over getting the information from Paula, actuals to date, so that they will start having an idea of, you know, where the things are. I plan to, in June, do the same kind of a thing for us, is to get a copy of the budget, or the major budget items, as to actuals, so we can see in June, rather than waiting till the budget committee to see where, if we're shortfall, or, you know, where we have to move money around somewhere there, so we'll do that in June. They want to work with the department heads maybe a little bit earlier, to kind of see where they're going to start to go, so there's no surprises, as some of it was last year in November. They'd like to move it to the town hall, especially if we get the updated sound system so that it can be on YouTube and on TV. Not that the fire station was bad, mind you, but that's what they'd like to do, and especially if we do the upgrading of our sound stuff here, it might work all right. They do, and one of the mentions was, and I don't know how far you got with the Matrix Committee. Have you notified anybody on the budget?
We have, and I was actually gonna ask if we had any updates tonight on if the budget committee has indicated anyone that they're gonna have represent that, and
Represent what?
the pay salary study committee.
Oh,
That's gonna
they
be
haven't been
comprised.
asked.
So far, it's gonna be comprised of Kevin and myself, and I don't know what, two department heads.
Fire and, Phil and Graham.
Okay, so it sounds like the fire chief and the police chief are gonna be involved in that as the department heads.
So can you send a note to Trish tomorrow to ask her for 2 budget, because they don't know, they know it's supposed to be
You
coming.
wanted 2 budget, okay.
Because if they can identify who their committee members are, I then wanted to open it out for the public to express interest for the other vacancies, and then I was gonna let the members composing of the select board members, the department heads, and the budget committee select those other members that we're gonna go forward with in the process.
And the officers are the same as last year, which is the chairman, and Rick is vice chairman, Stacy is the secretary.
Okay.
So I think that's important for us to know what they're really looking for ahead of time. That would work out great if that's what happens. Conservation, there isn't anything new, other than I missed the meeting at 7:15. I realized I was supposed to be there, so that didn't work out. And the fire chief gave us what he has there for stuff, and then the only thing with highway is to talk about when it comes up later, the stuff that they want to do here.
All right, for the planning board as well as the zoning board of adjustment, they, had to post meetings to declare the regional impact on the one project being proposed across from the Marshall Road intersection. That encompasses that fueling station there, a gas station, so there are meetings being held for that. One was held on Friday, correct? Was that, the first one was held on Friday, and there's another one on, I believe it's May 11th? 11th is another meeting regarding that, so that's just saying it has enough of an impact on the potential impact on aquifer, so we have to notify and make sure neighboring communities have an opportunity to give meaningful input on that, so.
Right.
And there are statutory time restrictions on that, that's why they came up so quickly.
Right, and the Rockingham Planning Commission gets involved as well. They receive a butter status when that happens, and they will convene a meeting, at least one meeting, where all parties will be invited, and then they will provide feedback to the board or boards.
Okay.
Because is it both of the boards of ours that are?
Both boards at this point, because once we, I believe Peter Coffin identified the statutory language in there and had discussed it with the planning board, and then obviously being the chair of the ZBA, he made provisions to go ahead and schedule those meetings so that we complied with state RSA.
Okay.
Other than that, I know with the police chief, if anyone didn't see on social media, 2 of the newest police officers in town, 2 young women, graduated the most recent police academy, so I'm sure they're still doing ongoing field training and stuff like that, but they are now back from the academy and working in town. That's all I have for liaison reports, so we'll move into old business. We have an email from the Public Works Director, Phil Coombs, on a preliminary report for the meeting room upgrades and a written summary for some consideration. I know it's no shock here that the sound in here is terrible. People at home can't hear anything. We're having all sorts of issues with this equipment. We're waiting on back-ordered microphones that are supposed to fix some of it, but then it sounds like we may have some other equipment that may need to be replaced and repaired so that people can actually see these meetings from home or review them at a later time. Anyone have any opinion on some of the items proposed by the Public Works Director?
It looks like some of it's already done. We put that there, the carpet's in place. We originally, you know, it was brought to my attention, I think it was 3 years ago. We put it before the voters to spend money, and the voters said no at the time.
Yeah.
So his fixes are within budget and simple enough that I think it'll make an impact.
Yeah, I think it's difficult to go forward and just spend money on the item that was specifically voted down by the town
Right.
A few years ago, but it sounds like the Public Works Director has come up with some creative solutions to help us a little bit in the interim, and especially while we're waiting for the upgraded equipment that we've already ordered.
I mean, we've been, you know, me, because I've been on that long, but this has been played with for a long time. And you're right about the warrant article that didn't fail, but, you know, every day somebody says something about this, and we can't meet here, the planning board, we gotta do it.
Yeah, you know, I understand all that, and I'm not sure that there was a good understanding of what was entailed in that process, and it was a lot of money that was being asked for. It's $29,000.
Yeah, for acoustical panels.
Right, and the Director of Public Works is recommending a solution, granted doing it with most of the town staff, and but for a fraction of that. And it's really dealing with all the hard surfaces that we've got here, where all the sound just bounces around. And I know that in some other town halls that I've been in, old ones like this, where they put some panels on the walls, it just makes a huge difference. One thing I wanted to add, and Phil's not here, but he was talking about curtains for the windows. There's actually shades on them, and if we pull the shades down, that should eliminate that hard surface, at least.
Yeah. So if the board's okay, do we want to go forward with the cost-effective recommendations that the Public Works Director has given us? Looks like, we have an estimate of...
Give them up to 5,000.
Yeah.
38 and
1250, so...
somewhere in that.
Not to exceed 5,000.
Yeah, so I'd entertain a motion to have the Public Works Director proceed in an amount not to exceed $5,000 in the recommendations that he's proposed.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any more on this for now? Okay. Let's see, we have vendor insurance indemnification policy to approve with the revised forms. I know we talked about this at the last meeting. Stacy Dion had provided some updates to the forms. We gave her some input, and it looks like she has followed up with us.
I have. So those forms have been updated per the recommendations of the select board, and then we also sent it to Primax. They actually recommended a couple of changes to some wording, and we've updated that, and I think we have everything that's been updated.
Does the board feel comfortable moving forward with this language?
So,
And
question,
go ahead.
question on the indemnity. Now, we talked about that a little bit. I'm assuming, say, for a crafter who doesn't have insurance, they can sign the indemnity form, because they don't have that much. I mean, if they have it, that's fine. They show they got their own insurance, they're covered.
Yeah, true.
And you have here crafters, proof of liability insurance if it's a registered company. But other than that, if it's just somebody selling knickknacks or something, they just have to sign the indemnity then.
Correct. They would sign they would provide the indemnification with the vendor application.
And so if the board moved forward, I would just look that we just, on the release and waiver of liability indemnity agreement, I would just ask that we remove the Kingston Day Celebration 2023 on the top, so that we could use that form for anything.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve and change the insurance requirement indemnity agreement and release of liability for all town facilities.
And as well as the updated insurance requirements.
Yeah.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
It would be important to make sure, Susan, to get this information out to the museum and the historic and the people who are either planning to or already have something going on. I think in August they're doing that there, this, right, because as we'd seen in the past, a lot of that stuff, they did it and it was fine and nothing happened, but they had no coverage at all, so.
Right.
We just need to let them know that it's available and the form's there, that's
Right, and just so you know, board members, I did share the work that we had done, noting that there was still some tweaking to happen, but at their last meeting, at the last museum meeting, I did share that with them. They made a copy of it, so they are aware of it. We just need to get them the final version.
I'd like to thank Stacy and Susan for working on this, and
Yes, yeah, thank you very much. I know Glenn had an item he wanted to bring up in new business.
I do. So I received an email from Muriel Ingalls of the Kingston Lake Association, and it's dated April 21, 2023. There was some initial salutation and greetings, but the nut of it is, and I'll read it to you, I think you are aware that Kingston Lake has been awarded a DES grant for $100,000. Bell Environmentalists wrote the grant through an initiative by Camp Lincoln YMCA. We would like a member of the select board to serve on the steering committee. We were hoping you would consider doing this. Your background with planning board would be especially helpful to the work of the grant. Our first meeting will be around the middle to end of May. Thank you, Muriel Ingalls. So I responded to Muriel saying that I'd be happy to be that representative, but that I couldn't do it until I brought it to the board and got that authorization, so.
Any opposition to Glenn being the representative for that board? Congratulations. Any other new business?
There's just the one thing, Glenn Greenwood has already completed that grant for the demolition grant from the Sandhorn. He needs this wording, because the current, agreement that we had Richard Wilson select board
Yes.
chair,
so
I
make
just-
a motion to authorize Chris
Just-
Bashard to sign all the demolition grant for the seminary project.
Or you could just say select board chair, just in case.
Yeah, if we reconstitute the board,
Okay.
then I'm not it, so just, yeah,
Well,
authorize.
it's just if it's there, you can sign it, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so board business, our vacant board seat. So last week, we discussed the vacancy. The board could not come to a consensus on any of the current candidates, so we reopened it up until noontime today. It appears that we have received some additional applicants. It appears that there may have been two that ended up in Susan's spam email files,
Yeah,
so.
I didn't know they were there until Chuck said, hey, did you get this? And I said, no. And I went and looked in spam, they came through the website. So anyway, we have two in there.
So we do have two that came in there, so the other one that didn't meet the deadline the previous time. So it looks like in addition to the candidates we had for consideration last time, we also have a Michael Matabeas. He had indicated a desire to be considered for the position. It looks like he didn't follow up, because I think he may have been looking for some more information from Susan, but then you found that email. And then also we have Peter Broderick, had expressed his interest. He did say that a letter was attached, but there was no attachment to that email.
No, Chuck has it, I think, if you wanted to.
No, I don't think it came through in mine either.
Oh, I thought that, what you showed me was.
Well, that was the letter, I think. I'll look. If I can find it.
So, and then in addition to that, we have Russell Prescott, who didn't meet the timeline for the previous one, but is now in consideration for this one. And then we had a Lori Schwed. Okay, so she had initially applied, then withdrawn, but when she saw it went back out, she decided that she would like to resubmit for consideration. So we have her letter as well. I'm not sure how the board would like to proceed. I'm not sure if the board is looking to do any reconsideration from the candidates we already discussed at the last meeting, or if we should move on to new available candidates. Well, seeing that everyone's very enthusiastic, I think we were at a standstill, and if nobody's willing to move forward, that they're going to reconsider on the previous candidates that we discussed. I am going to make a motion that we appoint Russell Prescott to the vacant select board seat for the remainder of this year until the conclusion of the next election to fill the seat vacated by Richard Wilson. And I'll make that a formal motion. If it's seconded, I'd like to open it up for further discussion.
All right, well, I'll second it for the discussion.
Okay.
The Mike fellow, what is that? Is there any background to that, or?
On which?
The new one you've got, Mike somebody?
Michael Matabeus, no, because I think he was looking for a follow-up to maybe submit information, and then Peter Brodericks did not have any information attached to Susan's email.
All right, well.
If you want me to follow up with them, you'd be putting it off another week.
Correct.
So.
And I think that seems to be the flavor of the community is that they would like us to do something.
Yeah,
So
I do have Pete's here, unless it's what you've got there. Please accept this letter as a request that I be appointed to fill the existing vacancy on the select board for the town of Kingston. Thank you for your consideration. I don't know if that's what Susan printed, but that's what.
He said he had an attached letter, so maybe that was it.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
all.
So as far as on the motion on the table, Russell Prescott, he's somebody that I've seen at action in the community. We're not personal friends. We don't hang out outside of events. He's just somebody that I've seen that, you know, I consider an experienced statesman. I've seen his work that he's done in the state legislature. He's also a successful, competent business owner who I think has been a part of this community for a long time. And I believe his family contributes to the community in numerous ways. I think the experience that he may bring to the table, being a responsible business owner, understanding budgeting, I'm sure he deals with human resources type elements in his work, but I think his legislative experience, tenure in the town, and understanding of the community of Kingston, I know I said it last meeting, the public's not naive. They can see the board's a little bit fractured now, and this is a subject who's known for their impartiality, and I believe they, you know, nobody would ever perceive them as beholden to anyone, and I think would be a great stabilizing force in the board right now.
Are you asking a question or two? Or is it?
It's, I guess it would be how the board wanted to pursue. We didn't offer that opportunity last time, so we should probably stay consistent with how we moved
Okay.
the last time. So if there's no other discussion on,
Well, just that, I mean, I know Russell, I'm very comfortable with Russell, but I think that the other two candidates that we have been considering had so much more in the way of board experience and town level experience that that would be a better option for us, and my vote would still go toward Ellen Faulkner, because I believe that is the right choice for us. So it's not a personal thing, Russell. Anyway, that's my thought.
I just feel the board there needs to be a balance in the board. Russ is an incredible individual. He's done a lot of work for Kingston Days, for the town, everything else. But I would have to say, I think I would support Ellen as well. And else, if Glenn made a motion, I'd second that, because I think she brings a lot to the table, and again, same thing. It's just, I think the board needs a balance across.
I think that would help. And that's why, because obviously, like I said, the board is kind of split right now, and this is somebody who does not appear aligned with anyone other than the interest of the town. Obviously, Chuck and I had voted for Ellie. We felt that, you know, being the candidate that put themselves up for the election, went out and campaigned and only lost by 1 vote, we felt that that was the more appropriate choice that had the town experience. And, you know, that's why I opened this up. I didn't just go into a motion. I asked if anyone wanted to reconsider their position on the candidates we had already discussed, and nobody came forward. So now this isn't, you know, if you were voted in the affirmative to support Russell, this isn't a vote against the person that you want to do, because obviously my primary choice would have been Ellie at the time because of her recent experience as selectman for the continuity from all the changes that have happened in the board, and as well as the fact that, you know, just under 50% of the townsfolk had voted for her in the very recent election. So I'm going to move the vote. All in favor of appointing Russell Prescott to the vacant select board seat?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Opposed. Motion does not carry.
Again, I believe Glenn mentioned he would put Ellie, and Ellen Faulkner, and I would do the same. I would second that motion.
Well, I mean, just to get it out on the table, then I'll make that motion to appoint Ellen Faulkner to that, to the position that's currently open.
And I'll second it.
Any discussion?
I would just say I think Ellen brings she's an individual that is been on every position, and she is independent of anyone, and I think she brings a lot to this table, and I think that's why I'm supporting her.
There were items that I won't, there were concerns that were brought to my attention, but I won't bring them up in public because I don't think it's appropriate.
Well, that's the part of the problem. I think they weren't appropriate the first time, and I don't think they're still appropriate. But
that's why I asked the board if we wanted to go into non-public or not. And the consensus was they've kind of waived that right to privacy. But there's one thing I won't do. So, take a vote on the motion. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? With that being said, so obviously we can't come to a consensus on any of the candidates we've discussed already.
So I would, let's make a motion that we continue on with the 4 of us and not have to every week go through doing the battle. I mean, it's not ideal, but I mean, unless we want to go through the list, I mean, I could recommend Pete Broderick, but I'm assuming that would be 2 to 2 also.
Well, so maybe what the board is looking for is somebody completely from the outside.
Well,
and we have candidates that fit that maybe haven't been in town long, but one of the resubmittal that we received, it seems like that individual has a ton of experience in other areas, incredibly new to the town. I mean, I will say there is something to be said for a small town. You really want somebody that understands the town, but if we can't come to a consensus, I think we have to explore all options. I don't know if anyone is possibly interested in pursuing any of the remaining candidates. So we have at least 3 candidates, or 4 candidates, 5 candidates, I guess, that we haven't voted on. So the candidates that we have not motioned or taken any votes on are Lori Swed, am I butchering, she here? Am I butchering that? Peter Broderick, Michael Matabeas, Andrew Berridge, and Dustin Hewitt.
so from an experience standpoint, I would be because he's been a selectman, he's been a health inspector, he's been involved with a lot of the stuff in the town, and it is a temporary position from now till March, and I don't believe he has any intention of running any further than that I would make a motion to bring Pete Broderick on.
I'll second it for discussion. I do have a couple concerns that we had to have members of the board speak to this individual about using town facilities for personal stuff, and I think that's problematic. We shouldn't have to tell people what's okay.
A lot of people have been doing that for a long time. So
yeah.
Pete happened to get, and let's get it on the table. I mean, Kevin certainly knows him.
I know
him,
Pete.
obviously, so.
You do? I mean, I'm glad that he put his name in. I applaud him for that. But he just got on the ZBA, so I think that that's a consideration. It's an important board for us in town. He's got a 3-year appointment to that, and it would be depleting that board by one regular member. So I think it's a factor. Whether it's a determining factor, I don't know.
I think there's enough of a history that he hasn't even seconded, so I would.
What I second?
Oh, you
I
did
second. I didn't second it for
okay.
discussion.
Yeah, no, yeah, okay.
So I'll, if there's no further discussion, I'll take the vote. All in favor?
Right?
All opposed? That does not carry. And so I know there's some other candidates that may have lived in town longer and have some more experience, but I also did see on social media there seemed to be a demand for a female presence on this board. And that is half the population of our town. So I'm going to make a motion that we appoint Lori Swed. Is it Sved or Swed? Swed.
I'll second it.
To the board. So we have a second. Any discussion? I guess we didn't read her letter, so I think it's appropriate that the public would understand before we take the vote. We did read all the other letters previously. My name is Lori Swed, and I would like your consideration for the open position of Board of Selectmen. Full disclosure, I submitted a letter of interest when the position first posted and then retracted it before the May 1st meeting. I second-guessed my qualifications predominantly because I haven't lived in Kingston very long, and because I worried that I wouldn't be able to fully commit to the position, that indecision is very unlikely. I know that I am qualified to become a selectman, and I know the commitment and dedication that I bring to whatever in front of me is without question, so here I am. My husband Dan and I moved to Kingston in October of 2022. We moved here from Maryland, where we lived for 20 years. We're both veterans. Dan has 10 years of Air Force service, and I retired from the Navy as a chief in 2004 after serving 20 years. I was only 39 and couldn't really retire, so I started working for a small company, defense contracting company, as a technical trainer and project manager. 19 years and 2 companies later, I still support the defense industry, albeit as part-time remote worker doing quality, auditing, process engineering, and document management. Some of my work experience includes managing an $83 million contract that had a team of 80+ people who provided network engineering support, installation, and training. Additionally, I twice implemented an ISO 9001-2015 certified quality system, once for my previous company and now my current company. I have a BS in Behavioral and Social Sciences, an AS in Addictions Counseling. I am also a certified project management professional. I have lived and traveled all over the country and the world, and although we haven't lived in Kingston for long, it truly feels like home. And we have no intention of uprooting again. We have 4 grandchildren and 2 sets of parents within an hour's drive. We live in our dream house and we can walk to breakfast. We're both members of the Kingston Veterans Club, and I'm an active member of the Kingston Days Committee. Having said all that, why should you select me to fill the vacancy? As you can see, I don't have experience with any elected appointed position, not even an HOA. Working full-time, raising kids, and going to school did not allow for much else. However, community involvement and support take many forms, and I took opportunities where I could. For example, during my years in the Navy, I volunteered as a coach for our local Special Olympics team. I also tutored children in reading as part of Sunday Scholars After the Navy, I served as an elections judge for many years, and I was very active in the recovery community in our county, mentoring parents and advocating for families who have a loved one with addiction. Admittedly, I am a rule follower. Couldn't have survived 20 years in the Navy if I weren't. On one hand, however, I ask a lot of questions, usually because I don't know something because I don't understand why, or sometimes to play devil's advocate and promote discussion. I have lived in Kingston for 7 months, and I also have no preconceived ideas on how and why decisions are made and how the town is managed. Why can this be a good thing? I am seeing things for the first time, which can give everyone a different perspective. Remember, I ask a lot of questions. I know very few people in town, and forging relationships with residents is key in establishing a successful, unbiased point of view. On the other hand, I also have years of experience following rules, orders, regardless of whether I'm in agreement. Don't get me wrong, I'm always up for a good debate, and then I'll carry on with the decision. I believe both those traits, challenging the accepted and learning how and when to carry on the agreed upon way forward, are the reasons why I'm a perfect fit for the select board. Why do I want to fill the vacancy? I believe the answer is the same as when I went through the initiation and asked why I wanted to be chief. I want to make a difference. I appreciate your time and consideration for my request.
I would say within 2 months of her move to the town, her husband first came over to one of the first Kingston Days meeting, and then she joined and has been very involved. So she is brand new, but she brings a different perspective, and she's involved.
Any further discussion?
I don't know you, unlike Russell and some of the others. And again, I applaud you for it's a great letter. Clearly, a lot of experience. I guess my concern is the lack of town and board experience, and when we had other candidates who could step right in and be effective day one, it's still an issue for me. So I have nothing else to say.
I'm disappointed in that same aspect, but we've got to move forward, and I think it'd be best for this board to have a full board, especially with all the stuff coming up. There's PFAS and everything else that's happening, the trash, there's a lot of stuff, so I think it would behoove us to have a 5-member board.
I agree. No disrespect, I don't think anyone's getting exactly what they wanted, but I think we're more effective as a 5-member board, and I think that's what the community wants. So if there's no further discussion, I'll move it forward. All in favor? All opposed?
I'm going to stick with my opposition, so and it isn't personal, and I'm looking forward to working with you.
So the motion carries. So now the question is, do you still wish to accept it?
Yes.
So I think it would probably be best, could you get sworn in tomorrow by Tammy, or before you leave this evening? We probably need to draft up the paperwork.
Yeah,
So why don't, we have to draft up the paperwork, so if you're available within the next day or two to get sworn in, because I think we have so much moving parts going on, we could get you sworn in and obviously get any information before you leave tonight. If we could get any information that Susan may need for contact info, so as soon as she's sworn in, we can be effective. And I really do thank everyone that did put in their name and step up. It's not easy putting yourself out there and being willing to do stuff for the town, and this was not an easy one. We didn't make it easy on anyone, so I apologize for that, but I'm hoping we can move forward and do what we need to do to get business done.
Well, and just to follow on to that, Chris, I mean, it's not like we haven't been getting business done. When the four of us have been doing the other business of the board, it's cranked right along, and for the most part, we're of one mind.
Yeah, I don't think anything has been held up due to the lack of that position.
And I just want to make sure that's clear.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay,
It will be good to have 5 members.
yes, it will be.
Yes.
All right, so that closes out board business. We are at public comment number 2. If anyone would like to come forward.
I think based on everything that's happened, that the board probably made a really good choice based on nothing else is gonna happen, based on how it's going. However, I do wanna say, Chris, that I think that you made a comment that sounded very detrimental to my character, but then wouldn't follow up on it because you used the non-public session thing where you didn't have a problem last week with it. All I'm saying is that if you have a question, Chuck had a question, he heard today that I only gave 2 weeks' notice, which is a lie. I gave over 4 weeks' notice. So I'm just saying that if you thought there was something that should have, should have been discussed in non-public, you should have called and asked me, and I could have maybe told you, I don't care if you discuss it publicly, but it made it sound like there was something that somehow you couldn't say. And I thought that was,
I didn't want to bring it up because I think it was personal opinions of other people in the community, and
that would be fine if you had said that.
Me relaying, yeah, and so I'm sorry to make it seem so ominous, but relaying it like that, I don't think would be appropriate for me to do, and it wouldn't be fair to you, even if you would waive that, even if you would waive that right to privacy.
Exactly, but, you can't drop one thing and then just leave it at that.
And I apologize for that.
And I accept it.
Any further public comment? All right, we're gonna, Tammy's coming up.
Just a quick question, are you going to reorganize the board, and are we gonna give the liaison?
My plan would be next week that with a full constitution of the board that we should, because right now I'm just the acting chair, I was actually voted in as vice chair, so I think we need to make those reconstitutions, and if we have to move or reassign any liaisons now that we can share the workload a little bit more, I think that's appropriate. Correspondence. So we have the Rockingham Planning Commission meeting and Municipal Officials Housing Forum. Do you have any info on that one?
It's I believe 4 times a year, the Planning Commission, at one of its regular meetings, turns it into a municipal forum, and they usually focus on a particular topic, but they invite not only commissioners, but other town officials who want to attend to participate, and there's usually a presentation, it's informational, and then it's opened up for questions, and it gives an opportunity for cross-town collaborative discussion, and so that's what it's all about.
Okay, so it looks like that is, so was this a result of that meeting, or is this a notification of the meeting?
Well, this is a notification of the next one of these to come up, which is happening on May 10th.
Okay.
Which is 2 days from now. Yep. At the Stratham Town Hall.
Okay.
At 6 p.m.
All right.
Chris, could we ask Tammy about this new person?
I think that's, are we?
Well, signing has been tabled, so.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do that for non-public.
Oh, okay.
Because it involves the hiring. It involves the hiring. Let's see, field use application for the Hurricanes Softball League. It looks like we have a facilities use application. They're looking to use Como Field. And it looks like they're asking for Monday through Thursdays from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. and Sundays 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 3 to 5 p.m. from May 4th until July 30th. Also, some additional dates of May 20th, June 3rd, and June 24th all day. It looks like this is obviously a competitive type softball league. They have provided us with the certification liability insurance. Did the recreation department just confirm if there's any other conflicts with any of the other recreational leagues?
He took it in and reviewed it and brought it around to the department, so.
And it looks like the fee associated with this use is $600.
So we haven't received that yet, so I'll
Okay.
let them know.
Phil signed off on it?
It has been signed off by the chief of police and the road agent.
The only thing I would say with that is, I would wait till we get a check.
Yeah.
Because that has happened in the past.
Yes.
So, we get the check, we can sign off on it.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that. The rest of the board comfortable with that. So once we receive the check, if we have it, we can sign off on it next week.
When do they start?
May.
I just want to make sure that we're not holding.
Oh, actually, it's asking for May 4th.
Well, when they get the check,
Well,
that's the point.
So if they bring a check down tomorrow, if the board is okay with that, once the check is in.
It can be signed, yes.
Anyone can come in and provide signatures as needed. Okay, so then we have appointment to the Recreation Commission. We have the appointment of Craig Barlow for a term of 3 years to expire on March 31st, 2026, for the Recreation Commission.
Do we, like, usually have them come in, or?
Usually.
I know we were, yeah, because with that big group, we had that real large group come in. So was he notified, was he asked to come in, or?
Yeah, but I can.
Yeah, if you could just ask him to come in, I don't have any issues signing off.
I don't either, but I'd like to.
We definitely said we wanted to get in the habit so we could actually know the faces and the people that are on these different commissions and committees.
Now things calm down, it'll be easier
So
to.
next Monday?
So yeah, I think we can sign off on it, but we'd like to invite him to come in.
The intent to excavate, I had an email from Robin today clarifying that he wanted it to go through Dennis.
Yes, yeah, we wanted Dennis to review that for the intent to excavate. It's in reference to another lot on Smallpox Road across from that other excavation. But we just wanted to make sure that he reviewed it to make sure it complies with any of the excavation statutes. Looked like it was about 2.5 acres of material. There are some differences of the type of project from the other parcel, but we just wanted to make sure Dennis reviewed it.
He sent it over.
We did receive some feedback from folks. This is we have a memo from Adam, who does our recording. Some folks had expressed some concerns over the fact that the last meeting wasn't posted, and due to that, it was because the audio did not record. So I just, some folks had some concerns about this, technical difficulties that we had. So Adam did provide us with an explanation. So I just would like the community to know, because we know a lot of people can't make it here and get to the meeting. So there were some folks that expressed some concern that they weren't able to watch that live due to the issues, or they weren't able to retrieve it and go back and watch it. So Adam stated that, he is providing an explanation of why the meeting of May 2nd, 2023 is unavailable on YouTube. He wanted to first clarify that he was unavailable and not in attendance for that Tuesday afternoon meeting. So he can only make an educated guess by extrapolating from the information he has available. It appears there was a technical error in streaming the meeting to YouTube. This is not the first time there has been a technical error in streaming, but in the past, this has been corrected by uploading a copy of the broadcast version of the meeting to YouTube. Unfortunately, while there is a video of the meeting that could be uploaded to YouTube, there is no audio due to an equipment failure about which all parties involved are aware and trying to address. Had there been working sound equipment, this would have been a moot issue, as the broadcast version could have immediately been uploaded and available on YouTube. The current video still could be uploaded, but with no accompanying audio. That does not seem to address that does not seem to address the concerns. However, please advise if you want this video uploaded to YouTube regardless of the lack of sound, in the interest of transparency. With regards to the meeting being labeled incorrectly on YouTube, I have reviewed that posting, and it is a stream of the planning board meeting that was held on the same date as the planning board meeting of May 2nd and is labeled correctly. Now there is also a select boards meeting on YouTube dated May 2nd, 2022, which was a meeting held on that date last year. So I would say if there's no audio to go with it, I don't think we need to post a video that nobody, unless they can read lips very well on low definition, I don't think they're going to require that.
What about even if we don't post anything, it may be something an explanation that the meeting took place, because people are going to be looking for it.
Yeah.
I think it would be nice if there was a narrative, if Adam could supply that, to say a meeting was held due to technical difficulties, there was no audio available for it, but I did want to make sure there was an explanation for the public of why nobody could find that meeting, and I don't know if anyone has anything else on that. Okay, thank you. Information on the Comcast franchise fee.
I saw, the thing is, I have a problem with it, I really think we should hand it all to Susan and have her, once you see it, we shouldn't have this, any of this
No,
floating
I
around.
think
No,
it's
yeah,
for
the-
information only, because you've been talking about those funds.
I know,
So-
and-
Yeah, I think we should have just
And
had the
that's all,
final,
yeah, it's a
number.
quarterly, but I'll pass it on and give that to her and she can shred them. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's only the quarterly.
So there is confidential information for
Yeah.
there's trade secrets contained within this that I don't think anyone should have had copies of. We should have only had the final number, so,
That's what came to me in the email, so.
yeah. You wanna send that down?
It's gonna
Or-
keep-
No, buying Comcast stock.
Alright. Sorry about that.
Goes to show there's no reason why we can't get this equipment.
Yeah. Cement board, or I just moved, did I just move?
That's what?
I didn't hand Susan
Yeah.
my memo, did it, or my agenda?
The abutter notice for Summit,
Yep.
for ZBA.
Okay, so the abutter notice, New Hampshire state law requires that you be notified of any review requests of the property which you are in a butter. This is for the Summit Distributing LLC at 249 New Hampshire Route 125, map R40, lot 15. The applicant is requesting a special exemption from Article 109:7 to allow a retail motor fuel outlet with a 51 square foot convenience store, quick service restaurant, and 5 retail fuel dispensing islands, 10 fueling locations, and 3 high-speed commercial diesel islands, 2 fueling locations within the commercial district 2. So that hearing is on May 11th, which is this week at 7 p.m. So that's the abutter notice that has gone out for that, and that's the one related to the regional impact process that we discussed.
Right, and that's for the zoning board of adjustment, and I believe the planning board has already acted upon a similar,
Correct.
similar declaration of potential regional impact.
Yep.
And they did that on May 2nd.
Okay. Be looking for an approval of the meeting minutes.
Make a motion to approve the May 2nd public and non-public meeting minutes.
Second.
Any discussion changes?
No, the only thing I'd like to say is I think Susan did a very good job of capturing a very hot meeting, so good job.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so it looks like we do have I'll just tell folks now, so our next meeting is on May 15th at 6:30 p.m. There's gonna be a public hearing on some road work to be done, but at this time, we're gonna be, take a motion to move into non-public per RSA 91, A:3, paragraph 2, personnel employee. We're gonna be doing employee evaluations, as well as we have to discuss a hiring situation.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Roll call vote. Yes. I'm a yes.
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 Chuck, yes. All right, all in favor. We are moving into non-public. Thank you very much.